October 15th, 1582. Pope Gregory XIII implements the Gregorian calendar after reluctantly agreeing to drop the name Greg Vember. Welcome to The Revisionists. I'm Brian Flynn.
I am Zach Powers.
And our guest tonight is one of the founding members of the Agency Sketch Group and a Denver darling, because he's a little darling, Corey Rhoads, everyone.
Hey, everybody, it's me.
Yep, that's your American Girl doll, little darling Corey Rhoads.
It's your catchphrase, which is an Americanized spin on Mario's catchphrase.
It's a me.
Wait, what?
Well, it's just Mario's catchphrase, but without the accent.
Is it really that... Can it something be that simple and also a catchphrase?
Mario proves that it can.
Okay, Jesus.
That's true.
He broke a lot of ground, and one of them was in catchphrase technology.
Broke a lot of blocks as well.
Technology?
So if you're a new listener, this show is essentially a show where we take an event or a person from history, and one of us, in this case Brian, gives the true account of that person or event, and another person, in this case me, gives a crazy, fantastical, bullshit alternate version that has demon bats or some shit like that.
Is that a preview?
Not a preview. And at the end of the episode, the third person, in this case Corey, votes on which becomes our canonical history.
All right.
Since we last met, we had the Night of 1,000 podcast at Syntax Physic Opera. Thank you to everyone who is listening now who came out to that. Unfortunately, due to some technical difficulties, it did not record. So that was just a special night between people in person and their human bodies
I regret
together.
Before the show saying, "Fuck you, Acarius, the podcast god," whom I vehemently denounced.
I mean, just saying "fuck you" doesn't seem that vehement.
I also said Macbeth like 3 times.
Oh, okay. That's a theater kid joke to all of you sad people listening. Mm-hmm. So, listeners, this is the second episode of our October Spooktacular, where we discuss more macabre stories from history. Last episode, we discussed the Dyatlov Pass incident with Keira McKellen, and the alternate history won out. And, sorry, my cat Willow, who you may remember from her debut on the last episode, has already found her way in here and onto Zach's lap.
Third time we recorded with the cat in my lap.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Hamilton.
Oh, Hamilton also. Yeah, that's right. So she will be appearing probably throughout the show as she begs for our attention.
Yeah, distracts us from the task at hand.
Well, listeners, this episode we're discussing the Axeman of New Orleans. So I think if we're all ready, I can take it away with the real history.
I think so.
This real history is fucking, even for a serial killer, spoiler alert, it's fucking crazy pants.
Yeah, he had a way with writing notes.
Yeah, he did. So we'll start on May 22nd, 1918, where brothers Jack and Andrew Maggio start hearing strange gasping and moaning noises coming from their brother's apartment. His brother lived behind the grocery store that he ran. Jack and Andrew both claimed that they didn't hear anything before this because they were, quote, totally trashed.
Yeah, and also their brother had a sock on the door, so they didn't think anything of it.
Right.
Because this was a frat house.
Yeah, they thought he was just getting it wet, basically.
Gross.
Sorry. Yep. I can't believe...
Whoa.
Yeah. Turns out the only thing he was getting wet was the pillows with his blood.
I can't believe it's not butter.
Wait.
Is that what the investigators said when they looked at the yellowish blood? Because he had a very poor diet.
Well, no, it was New Orleans tradition. When you investigate a murder scene, you dip bread in all the blood to soak up the DNA.
Right.
And to test that it's actually blood.
And not
like how you
marinara.
see someone grab a little
Some
spoonful.
au jus.
Yeah, exactly.
On a cop show, you'll see a cop grab a little finger of cocaine and be like, definitely cocaine. Those cops are just trying to get high, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how the po' boy sandwich was invented. They just took some fried shrimp on bread and soaked up human blood with it. That's not supposed to be appetizing, guys.
I'm just trying to help.
To any cops listening who want to become police so they can get high on all the free cocaine supplies they find, don't do that in real life. You don't know what that white powder is.
And also, you might get fired for that.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to go again with you might sniff bleach and die, but fired too.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, even if it is cocaine. Anywho, So the brothers went next door and they found their brother Joseph and his wife Catherine had been brutally murdered. Their throats were cut and their heads were bashed in with an axe, almost as an afterthought. And then that's May 22nd. June 27th of that same year, making a routine delivery to a grocery store owned by a man named Louis Bessemer, a driver found Bessemer and his mistress, Harriet Lowe. Both had been struck in the side of the head with an axe. Lowe eventually died over a month later.
That's just rough, man. That must have been a rough month for him.
Yeah, I mean, rough month. One of them got murdered. They were late on their cable bill. Comcast kept calling them. Again,
And
massive
just,
head wounds.
Yeah, head wound that you just can't come back from.
All the text message he's ignored over the last month, texting, sorry, been a rough month. Hopefully get back to you soon.
And sends an axe emoji.
Yeah. There is not one, but there should be.
There has to be.
Sorry, got axed.
So, June 27th, jumping forth, August 10th, Pauline and Mary Bruno are woken by commotion in the next room. They run into a heavy-set man in a dark suit and hat running away, and their uncle, Joseph Romano, with a serious head wound. He died 2 days later. By this point, all of New Orleans was in, constant panic. People were reporting finding axes stashed outside their back door. And people called in just people in dark suits and floppy hats, which this is 1918. You have to figure that it was everyone, basically, in New Orleans. That's like what the Zatarans guy wears now, I feel like.
Now we know what the sausage is made out of.
So, March 10th.
I feel like a floppy hat would be a bad accessory for a murder.
How so?
Like you want a tight hat. Not one that...
I mean, I don't know that hat choice is really the main concern of a murderer.
No, I mean, I just feel like no hat at all. Maybe even.
Really?
Ski mask really has come into its own as the preferred murder
Headgear.
Or pantyhose or something, something to
Panty.
distort your face.
So
Richard Nixon mask. I guess that's more bank robberies.
That would have been impressive if the Axeman of New Orleans had a Richard Nixon mask.
in 1918. It's actually just a baby mask at that point. Also, I just like the idea that a Richard Nixon mask is just a fashion choice you could just put on before you go out on the town. Instead of I could do a fedora, could put on my Kangol or whatever. Nixon mask.
Freddy Krueger did emphatically state fedoras are pretty good murder wear.
That if you take nothing away from Nightmare on Elm.
GQ's hottest murder wear, 1984, fedora was right up there.
Yeah, I remember Freddy Krueger's commercial for fedoras. It's like, get a fedora, bitch.
But you know what? They did a lot of Photoshop on him on that cover. I just feel like it wasn't an accurate representation of Freddy Krueger.
Well,
unrealistic body standards.
Yeah,
I don't know what kind of thing
they can do amazing things with Photoshop.
We're telling our kids that having third-degree burns over literally your entire body is not beautiful.
Anyway, so there's a lull in the Axeman action between August 10th, 1918. We jump to March 10th, 1919. Where Charles and Rosie Cordemelia survive an attack, but their infant daughter, Mary, sadly does not. And Rosie, while she's recovering, accuses their neighbor, Orlando Giordano, and his son, Frank, of the attack. Charles denied his wife's claims. Orlando was almost 70, and his son, Frank, was huge and couldn't have fit through the small hole the killer chiseled through the door.
Oh, okay. I thought you were just going to say the regular door. Which
Yeah. No, he was...
I just want to... At that
He
point,
was an ogre.
I went to see a sitcom about Orlando and Frank.
Yeah. Oh, an old man and a son that's too big to go through doors.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's high concept.
It's like the early Sanford and Son.
Wait, what? How is it like that?
They're related by blood.
Okay. Okay, then. So, nonetheless, both men were tried and convicted of the murder. Charles and Rosie divorced after the trial, and Rosie later retracted her accusation, and the Giordanos were freed. And this brings us to the first, granted, a serial killer is kind of crazy in its own, but this brings us to the first really crazy part of the Axeman story. 3 days after the killing, the New Orleans Times-Picayune receives a letter from a man claiming to be the killer. And there's a lot in it that's typical serial killer letter stuff.
It's very hot. Yeah, it's very like, I am from another realm. Like, I came
from
here
the depths
from the
of hell.
planar realm or some shit.
Yeah.
And I will soon adjourn myself of you mere mortals.
Yeah, it came with a galley copy of his sci-fi book. My favorite part of this whole letter is this paragraph where he says, quote, "I'm very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well then so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is some of your people who do not jazz it on Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe."
Jazz clubs are safe.
Jazz clubs are safe, and the story goes that night, every jazz club in New Orleans was open late.
And packed to the brim.
And completely packed, and no one was murdered that night. But there's also speculation that it was just like a club promoter who wrote the letter trying to get people through the door, which is a fucking great strategy.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. It's only slightly marred by the fact that it has to be illegal.
Threatening to murder people? Yeah, I gotta think that's illegal. But like, having spent years having to promote comedy shows, I'm like, I could also see where that person is coming from.
But to be fair, as bad as jazz often is, if you gave people the choice of going to an open mic or being killed in their beds, I think it would be a tough call for some of them.
Some would probably just be like, finally.
Yeah. If you gave someone a choice of being murdered in their beds after going to an open mic, they'd be like, yes, I've seen the depths. So after this, people start going insane, basically. People start sending letters to the newspapers that are like actively challenging the Axemen to come into their homes. One even said they would leave the window open and very politely asked the Axeman not to damage the front door. So
that sounds like the Axeman is smart enough to know that is a classic Home Alone trap setup. That there is like a little flamethrower above the window, and he'd like look into camera for a few seconds while it blew on his head. Yeah, melting his floppy hat.
Yeah, of course. And the Axeman was famously deterred by I can't remember the movie that's Angels with Dirty Faces.
Mm-hmm. Angels with Dirty Souls.
Angels with Dirty... Was that it?
I think so.
Whatever.
There were two. One in the first movie and one in the second.
I spent way more time with Home Alone, too.
This concludes our miniaturized Home Alone podcast.
So, October 27th, 1919, we have the last alleged Axeman murder. Esther Pepitone woke up to a noise and found a large axe-wielding man fleeing her husband's room. Her husband, Mike Pepitone, lay dead in his bed. But even though she saw him running away, Esther fails to describe any characteristics of the killer. And then the Axeman just disappears. And this is where some of the like crazy theories come in. So the razor that was used to kill Joseph and Catherine Maggio, the first victims, belonged to Joseph's brother, Andrew, who was one of the people who discovered the bodies 2 hours after the attack. Police released him after questioning him because they couldn't break down his story at all. Harriet Lowe survived for a month after she was attacked, and in that month she gave police various and sometimes conflicting accounts of what happened. In going through Louis Bessemer's apartment, who was again her lover, they found letters hidden in his apartment written in German, Russian, and Yiddish, and she said she thought he was a German spy. So he was arrested on that count, and then later released, and the police who arrested him were demoted for, quote, unsatisfactory police work.
Oh, wow. What a throwback when that was a thing that could get you demoted. It's worth noting, though, that on the German spy front, there's a weird reference to, what's his name, Franz Joseph in the letter he wrote, who was ruling Austria at the time.
Yeah, that was a bit strange. So he was arrested and released, and Lowe, 2 days before she died, said that Bessemer himself was responsible for attacking them, and he was arrested but eventually acquitted after like 10 minutes of jury deliberation. So either juries were way dumber then, or just there wasn't any good evidence.
Yeah. Or their version of 12 Angry Men is just a lot shorter than ours is.
But this brings me to my favorite theory about an Axeman suspect. And we have to go forward in time a little bit to December 1921, all the way to Los Angeles. A man named Joseph Doc Mumphrey is shot and killed. LAPD learns he had recently moved there from New Orleans. And Mumphrey was part of a Black Hand organization, which was a sort of like mainly an extortion ring that targeted like immigrant business owners.
And this is separate from the Black Hand that assassinated Franz Ferdinand.
Right.
Just I was going to ask.
It's a very...
they got reach.
Yeah. It's a very popular like evil organization name. I gotta...
Be more creative with your evil organization names, guys.
No more Black Hand, no more Cobra.
Spectre's been done.
Cobra Kai. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's all I can think of. Rita Repulsa, I guess. That's not really an organization.
That's a person.
Yeah, that's...
The Legion of Doom.
Legion of Doom. The South. But he was part of this extortion ring targeting immigrant grocers, which happened to be the largest pool of victims of Axeman murders. And Mumphrey's time in prison corresponds to time periods where there were no Axeman murders. And the person who shot and killed him in Los Angeles, Esther Albano, said Mumphrey killed her second husband when he refused to pay, and she killed him when he threatened her. And then she made another claim. She said that Joseph Mumphrey also killed her first husband because it seems that Esther Albano's name used to be Esther Pepitone, widow of Mike Pepitone, the last Axeman victim.
Whoa.
And that is the
last scene in an episode of CSI, or the second to last scene, where all the pieces fall into place.
What's the last scene then?
Well, I mean, them confronting him, but he's dead in this case, so I guess that scene wouldn't happen.
Yeah, okay. They just go to his grave and just
are like,
everyone tackles him. We did it. You son of a... Book him. And someone just throws handcuffs on a casket.
Yeah, next to the flowers by the
Yeah.
the fresh dirt.
I could see this actually happening on an episode of CSI.
Yeah, Ice Cube says something clever.
Is Ice Cube on CSI? I thought he was on...
Ice-T.
I thought he was on Law and Order, though.
Ice-T is on Law... Oh, okay.
Ice-T's on Law and Order. LL Cool J is on a CSI or an NCIS.
Well, we've cracked the case again.
All important stuff we need to figure out.
Of course. And that is what I could determine to be the verifiable story of the Axeman.
That's an interesting tale.
Just leaving it at that.
I have
pregnant with possibility.
A slightly different account. Maybe I read a different series of articles than you did.
Okay.
But
you read a whole series of articles?
Yeah,
I read 2.
I researched this for days. I was holed up I had like a bunch of pictures on the wall with lines connecting them.
Okay.
So our story begins in New York City in 1960.
Okay. Different place, different time.
A little bit of a time-space discrepancy there.
A temporal event, I believe it'd be called.
The city reeks.
Just completely disregarding.
You could hear the desperation howl through the alleys, replete with drunken vagrants.
Is this
Philip
Rorschach?
Mumphrey, freshly acquired whiskey under his arm, heads back to his office, only ready to fiddle with his newfangled electric guitar.
I could have sworn you were going to say fiddle twice.
The sign on his door says, Philip Mumphrey, private investigator, though it's worn down by the ages. And no sooner does he sit down than trouble walks through his office in the form of a dame.
Fuck you.
Her name was Susanna Martin. She says her friend and famous rock record producer, Caligula,
oh, yes, of course,
has been kidnapped by a man who wants to destroy rock music at its source. Early 20th century New Orleans, the hotbed of jazz that it was.
Mm-hmm.
And that the perpetrator was none other than John Lithgow, famous rock music hater.
Is it young Lithgow or is he...
Well, time will tell. And
Wait,
time
what,
in this case...
What does that mean? That doesn't mean anything.
Time in this case means a time machine. Because, of course, Lithgow had absconded with Caligula's time machine previously established in the canon of this podcast to go back in time to early 20th century New Orleans and kill influential people involved in the birth of the jazz movement, which would lead to rock and roll, which of course he hates.
Of course.
Because he doesn't want teens dancing.
Okay. And of course getting killed in car crashes, which is really, those teens would not have died if they weren't dancing.
Okay, so we know which side Brian comes out on the Dirty Dance Footloose debate. He takes the case. She says she can help him get back there because she once built a time machine when she was living in, 16th century Salem.
Wait. Okay, continue.
Of course, she had been displaced in time, also previously established in another podcast.
Mm-hmm. Episode 6, Salem Witch Trials.
And he goes back in time to New Orleans in the 1910s. Well, he has to take a cover job, so he starts to teach a bunch of young jazz students at the local school, whilst all the while investigating the case.
I mean, this is a perfect job for someone who's trying to kill jazz bows.
Oh no, John Lithgow's trying to kill the jazz bows. He's trying to save the jazz bows.
Wait, Momfrey.
Momfrey is trying to save the jazz bows.
Trying to track your characters.
Correct. John Lithgow is there to kill the jazz bows, but he probably also has an assumed name and alias.
Like the Trinity Killer or...
Something like that. And...
I didn't mean to step on that if that was something you were doing.
As time goes on, a couple murders start up, and he's doing his part. He's doing his part to track them, all the while growing to love these rapscallion kids, who are becoming more and more talented as the days go on. And meanwhile, he's retaining his cover with Susanna, who's posing as his wife. But she always reminds him it's just a cover. But soon, cover turns to lover. As they fall deeply in love.
Just the look on your face when you said that.
And Philip finds he might be happy for the first time in a long time.
Are you reading this off the back of a paperback? What are you doing?
That remains to be seen. He gets a hint from a fellow who comes in to watch his jazz students perform, an enthusiast of the art form, that he's noticed a shady character around his house the past few days, and he decides the best bet is to stake out this guy's house in case he tries to act. Well, he does so. And one night, having drifted asleep during a long stakeout, he hears screams that suddenly wake him. He runs inside the house and finds that the man is dead, but his wife, Harriet Lowe, is alive.
Whoa.
She manages to mummer out the name or the words, Pepper Tone. He doesn't know what that means. I may have spoiled it by saying name. You can edit that part, maybe. And also, you said Pepitone earlier. I wasn't expecting you to go that detailed. But he hears a ruckus from behind the house. The killer's still there. He chases him down a long tunnel and finds his evidence dungeon. But the killer has fled there too. But the night of March the 13th is marked with an X, as is every night where a murder has occurred. Back at the school, the kids are having hard luck. They're not getting any gigs, and their parents are poor. It could be...
Wait, the kids are trying to get gigs?
Yeah, everybody's trying to get gigs. The kids, their parents, all the jazz bows want gigs.
Is this like... But I mean, is this like a form of child labor, but for jazz?
Well, they got to work. This was 18 or whatever. Kids worked.
Yeah, they're out there gigging.
Out there gigging, playing the sax.
Grinding.
Yeah, I don't want to say that. But
they have an axe to grind, that's for sure.
Booyah.
There it is. That's what I'm here for.
That's when Philip comes with an ingenious idea.
You just punch a clock after you say that.
Philip comes up with an ingenious idea. He'll send a fake letter to the police department saying that on March the 13th, every family should hire jazz musicians to play at their house or go to jazz clubs. Thus, solving both problems. First, the kids all get gigs, as everybody doesn't want to get murdered. And second, Lithgow is foiled by the presence of too many people in every single household.
Also, the economy is stimulated. That's sort of like the...
Yeah, it's the third...
That's the Keynesian economic model.
The third spike on the trident.
The third spike on the triangle.
Trident.
Oh, trident. Okay. I retract my argument.
Lithgow doesn't kill any that night, but a few days later, he determines something disturbing at the school. The attendant notes that a man was inquiring about him and the Jazzbo kids.
Which sounds like a great jazz band name, actually.
Fortunately, the man managed to take down the name on his ID. Pepitone. The case has been cracked. After a quick trip to the Census Bureau, he finds that there's only one Pepitone in the area who is centrally located enough to get away with all the murders.
Okay, I was going to say that's very convenient.
It is extremely convenient. You would almost say, like, I ran out of time and didn't have a more satisfactory solution.
Writing is hard.
He runs back to his house to tell his wife, who he thinks may be in danger since Pepitone was asking about him, only to find her in the tub, dead. Mm-hmm. Trinity killer.
The only good season of Dexter, people.
Mm-hmm. He manages to make his way to Pepitone's home, where he finds, of course, John Lithgow, covered in blood from the fresh murder. Lithgow taunts him that you may have saved rock music, but you lost your happiness. Before the detective bashes his head in with his electric guitar, the final Axeman murder.
Fuck you. I forgot that I thought it was heading that way to a guitar pun. Motherfucker. Oh, you beautiful motherfucker.
Momfrey sees the end of the school year out and sees his kids graduate. Saves Caligula, who signs each of the kids to an exclusive contract and a few adventures on his time machine.
Again, with Caligula and with child labor laws, that seems like unsavory.
Well, we established, I don't know if we established he was not that much of a, I think he was like a pervert, but a consensual, like, I don't know.
Oh, I thought he was just, I mean, he was a madman either way, though.
Sure. But those kids go on to be Muddy Waters and Leadbelly and Prince, you know, major names displaced through time in the evolving rock industry. Mm. And Momfrey steps out on his own into the sunlight, knowing that the world is still a rotten place, but maybe, just maybe, he can bring in a little bit of sunlight.
Momfrey and
Later,
Sons.
he was shot to death by his new lover, so... and that's the true story. That's the true story of the Axeman murders.
Oh, Jesus.
The story was later very loosely developed into the movie School of Rock. They had to cut the murder angle because it just didn't. It was like with Annie Hall when Annie Hall was a murder mystery.
I think Jack Black could play a pretty convincing murder if he.
Oh, God, what is that movie? Benny or there's a movie where he plays a murderer that's very, very good.
Oh, Bernie.
Actually. Bernie.
He seemed like kind of a dick in King Kong.
Wait, I've never seen his version of King Kong.
Peter Jackson King Kong.
He plays the director, the guy who captures King Kong. And
I thought you meant Peter Jackson in like a weird Synecdoche, New York thing that he's doing.
Yeah, it was very avant-garde.
For Peter Jackson.
And a King Kong remake.
Where, of course, in the play within a play, they're remaking King Kong also, but with a slightly smaller ape.
This time just Bigfoot from Harry and the Hendersons. John Lithgow's there.
Oh, God damn it. Well, Corey, the role of judging falls to you this episode. So take it away.
So I get to judge which is true, which is false. Huh?
Which becomes, in the future of our show, the true story of the Axeman of New Orleans.
Well, I feel like Brian Flynn's his version sounded a little far-fetched. So
no, I agree.
So I guess I'm going with your version, Zach.
Sweet victory once again.
Your version's canon.
Yep, that, of course. It seems so plausible now. Corey, thank you. So, listeners, before we go, we have one sort of big announcement. And that's that we are going to be starting up a Patreon page for this podcast. We get to see the numbers every other week when we post episodes, and right now we're about 3,000 subscribers, and that's amazing, and we can't thank you enough.
Our subscriber numbers are the opposite of Donald Trump's poll numbers. Timely. That was a hashtag?
Okay. Well, now we're down to one subscriber. who is, of course, Chris Christie, bitterly. So we're going to use the money to put on more live shows and upgrade equipment. You can find the link to that on our Twitter page, but we're going to start, once we have some good rewards going for people, we're going to start actually pushing that more. But thank you to everyone for supporting the show by listening and subscribing. Really, really fantastic. And you could always find news about the show and leave us a comment or ask us a question at revisionistpodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and now Instagram. And thank you to everyone who's written a review on iTunes. We're now over 50 reviews.
Yeah, I think 50 even.
Oh, okay, perfect. So yeah, thank you to everyone who's doing that because it really, really helps. So before we go, Corey, like I said, you are one of the founding members of the agency. You have a show Bits and Pieces the first and third Saturday of every month.
Yep, Voodoo Comedy Playhouse, 8 p.m.
Do you want to talk about the agency a little bit and what you guys do?
Yeah, we're just we're a sketch group. We do, we got together because we do stand-up and improv, and we were interested in doing sketch. So, you can check us out at agencysketch.com. We've got a bunch of videos up there. So we run kind of a variety show at the Voodoo, but we're gads about town. We do...
Sorry,
we do all kinds of performance art,
Yeah.
So,
and that's also Walter Abbott.
Walter Abbott. That would be a hideous, horrifying...
the horrifying golem.
Yeah. Mix those two creeps together.
Man, can you imagine Walter Booth's face on Robert Abbott's body and vice versa?
There'd be no stopping him. He'd fuck everything.
Jesus. They're both very fine gentlemen. And you were also on The Great Arguments and Grievances the day after this comes out. So that'd be Sunday, Sunday the 16th.
Yep, come see it tomorrow. Vine Street Pub, 10 p.m. Great show, free show.
As for me, I'll be at Comedy Works Tuesday, October 18th at 8 p.m. Come check that show out because there's a lot of amazing people on that show. But I think that'll do it for this episode. Corey, thank you for being here.
Dude, thank you. This was fun, guys.
Yeah. Zach, thank you as always.
No, of course.
For everyone here at The Revisionists, I'm Brian Flynn.
I am Zach Powers.
Have a good time.
Have a good time.